I'm Stephen Foskett here at AI Field Day. Now, one of the things that happened recently was that Tech Field Day joined the Futurum group. We, along with our friends at the Evaluator Group, Cybersphere, CTO Advisor, et cetera, are all part of a bigger company. And one of the reasons that I was excited to do that was because it gave me a lot more resources, both in terms of operating Field Day, but also in terms of doing this thing that we do, which is kind of writing and speaking and learning about the industry. People like me who spend a lot of time on the functions and the features and the sort of the practitioner aspects don't always have access to data that the rest of the analyst world has. But Futurum is building a data platform called Intelligence. And so what I wanted to do here is basically share that platform with you, the Field Day audience and the Field Day delegates, to kind of show you what it is and what we've got. So as I said, Futurum is a technology advisory company. There's a whole portfolio of different companies. The Futurum crew includes a group of folks who are focused on feeding this intelligence platform in various areas. Now, right now, the practices for the intelligence platform are workplace intelligence, customer experience, and AI. And of course, this is AI Field Day, so I'm going to focus on the AI side. So most of what you're seeing here is data that was collected by Keith Kirkpatrick about the AI market. There's more coming in the future. Right now, essentially what we're looking at is an intelligence database, an intelligence dashboard. It's based on surveys of IT decision makers, of buyers. They do a kind of a Q&A survey every 6 months to learn more about how these decision makers are, what decisions they're making, and how they're buying things in these various markets. And so in the AI market, they have recently asked them things about, what platform are you using? Who's your partner to deliver this stuff? And I thought that would be kind of fun to share with you. So we're going to kind of dive into that. All of this stuff is also available, not just internally, but externally to customers, and they can sign up by going to the website and learning more. It is a professional tool, but it is pretty widely available, and it's pretty cool because not only do people get access to the data, but they also get access to the analysts. And so if the question is, where did this data come from, or what do you mean by this question? What I'm told is that essentially you're going to be directed to the person who did that data collection, and they're going to give you that information and answer your question. So let's actually, instead of going through the PowerPoint, let's actually look at the tool and go through some stuff. And so here it is. So every 6 months, this is updated with information about how people are deploying AI. This is the AI decision maker dashboard, and this is the summary of key findings. So essentially, what we're looking at here is over 1,000 people who are currently building and deploying AI applications. These are the key things that they came up with in this survey. They vary. There's actually demographic information in here that you can drill into. But I looked at it earlier today, and they were really all over the map, from pretty small to some of the biggest companies. It is skewed toward IT companies, though it includes a lot of data that, like, I think a third of them or something were IT companies, but it includes a lot of data for other industries as well. So I felt like it was a pretty good sample. And it's also not just American companies, it's global. One of the coolest things too is that, yeah, you can actually access the exact data. You can access the surveys and the questions and see the answers directly. So from my perspective, as somebody who's interested in the AI market, these first two findings I thought were pretty interesting. So essentially, half of all the people that answered these surveys were planning on either changing vendors or adding vendors this year. And by the way, this data was just updated, I think, in October, so it's pretty new. Now, this is not a surprise to me because this is such a dynamic space and there's a lot going on. So let's zoom into some of these things. If we look at the outsourcing stuff, we can see that not only were they planning on changing vendors, it's just sort of it's what you would expect, that essentially half of everybody was planning on doing new things. The other thing that I was interested in is sort of which vendors they're working with. So for example, if we look at SaaS products, which of these products do you use? If you look up here, it's kind of interesting because you can select between primary and all that apply, and you get very different answers if you switch that switch. And I think that, again, this reflects the reality of the AI market, that most people are actually deploying more than one vendor, a lot more than one vendor. So you see, like, the Microsoft is the #1 partner on both cases, but Microsoft is the primary vendor of 21%, but it's one of the vendors in the profile of 50%. So Microsoft is obviously huge in terms of SaaS providers. The same is true on the end-to-end side. You look at this, if they're only using kind of one vendor, well, it's AWS at 20%. But if you look at all the different vendors they use, almost 40% of people are using AWS. I was also interested in the fact that it kind of breaks things out according to different slices of the market. So one of my first things was, where's OpenAI? Right? Well, OpenAI is more of a developer tool, so that's actually on a different chart. It's on the developer tools chart.
It's almost interesting here that the outliers kind of provide a little bit more insight than the top level too.
Right.
Maybe even from the perspective of the companies that are driving the data, like CrowdStrike.
And so it's also not clear whether, for AWS, Microsoft, IBM, and Google, we're talking about, just usage of the cloud to host their AI applications, or are they using SageMaker, Vertex, and, Azure ML, or whatever
So I'd be
solutions to do that?
interested to hear how we, the delegate community, would use this data in our own personal research to further these data points.
Yeah, that's actually, Keith, that's really what I was keying in on, is what does this mean?
Yeah, I can respond to, Ray, what you were asking. So I have another whole section on this, which is on the DevOps side and the application development side. So really, if you double click down into individual parts of the surveys, you can find out what the information is. So the vendor sentiment data that's here, this was only the top line information.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual survey was that was underneath this one, but I know on my survey, if it was that right question, which says end-to-end AI applications, then I would say, okay, if it's AWS, then the next question would be, what tool sets are you using underneath? And then you get that vendor sentiment information. This is meant to be a high level point. To Keith's point, the way I use this in my research is I would say, well, if I was writing a project with somebody, I would say 38% of end users in the survey are using end-to-end AI applications on AWS, right? That kind of a response. And if you kind of double click down into it, you can kind of get in.
I would be a little concerned using it, being able to say that statement you just said, that they use end-to-end AWS applications, because if I look at all the other vendors that are mentioned, there's a few that I would definitely say, yeah, you're using that for AI. But like, it's almost like they believe the AI washing is what this appears to me. Like at the first glance, if they just picked it because, it says there's AI.
That's right. It's AI inside.
Right, but it's not, they're actually using it to drive AI applications.
Like
One of the points on that
is security,
Yeah.
right?
this is what we see.
Like,
This is what we see too with Field Day too, is because essentially, AI is almost in the eye of the beholder. And so remember, this is survey data. This is primary survey data where you basically went to a person and said, which are you using? And so to them,
exactly.
yeah, CrowdStrike is my end-to-end AI application.
So it's great branding that they've done.
Right, but then when you're
Not a bad
writing
thing.
a survey instrument, that's kind of like the thing. If you, no disrespect intended, but like if you don't, you're not able to draw that response out and to prove it, to me, I would not be able to use that in writing because I would not be able to legally defend what the survey respondent meant by it, right?
Fair point. I mean, I think it depends on how you tell the narrative in the story that you're talking about.
Right, exactly. No,
I
that's,
mean, if
that's
you're
what I
looking
mean.
at it in the context of how you frame up your response in the project, if the question is specifically how many of your respondents say that they're using AWS for AI applications, then that's a fair response. If the question is what is, the double click down into that, then you absolutely have to have that relevant
I
information.
agree.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like I'd want to see the actual question. I do that with all kinds of
course.
things, survey results. And, were they able to multi-select? And also I'd want to know who the target audience of the survey respondents were, not who was solicited.
Yeah,
And I hope that's we're all going to see
And
that.
I will tell you that each of those things is actually true of this.
Yeah,
Now,
good.
I have been asked not to show the actual
I hear you.
questions on this
I
recording
hear
because that's, I guess, a proprietary thing.
you.
But you absolutely can see the question in the tool. The other thing is you absolutely, yes, they can multi-select,
Yeah.
and you can absolutely see demographics of who answered it. I don't know if you can see demographics of who didn't answer it.
Maybe just showed us a crappy slide, a crappy selection, then making us not.
So what you all, Stephen, to your point, what you also see in this tool is you'll also see research briefs on how the data is being used from the report. And it's just from the question, to your perspective, it's just a question and how that question is being represented back. There's no analysis around it. It's just a question.
Right. I hear you. But
Exactly.
we see so many skewed survey results where, down somewhere in the details, there's, and we discarded any person that only selected one thing on a multi-select. Like that's what not just data people, that's what smart people want to do. So I get that there are parts that you can show us and parts that you can tell us
We've been
about.
burned
And I'm fine with
before,
that.
that's what we're saying.
Because sorry, it went away.
Whoever wants
I'd
to
walk away with
competitive,
something
you
like
also have that.
Adobe beats AWS on AI, because that's what one of your charts seemed to show. But I know that that's probably not true, because
Depends.
I don't know why Adobe came out on top of AWS, and we'd all want to know why it did.
Yeah, and so my hope was that to basically expose this sort of toy shop of data. And for me, looking through this, it is kind of like a candy store, because I'm looking through it, I'm just like, wow, I don't have this kind of information. I don't know even how to talk about this stuff. But when I'm covering these companies, like on the rundown, when we're talking about these companies, I'm going to look at this data first so that I can have some context here. So if there's an announcement related to IBM as an AI development tool, instead of just saying, well, I've heard that some people are using IBM, I can actually look at this data and say, okay, according to this, 26% of the people in this October 2023 survey were using IBM development tools for AI. And that tells me a lot about the market and about the relevance of that news. And so again, as a writer, as a blogger, as a podcaster, et cetera, I would not have known that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, I think a lot of us are kind of victims of marketing ourselves. Because a lot of us, I think, you see a press release, you see a blog article, you see a company claiming, they give us a briefing and they claim, yeah, we're one of the leaders, right? Again, I'm not picking on IBM. In fact, I'm impressed by IBM because they told me that they're one of the leaders in AI development tools, and I took that with a grain of salt when they talked about it. But the fact that 26% of people in the survey said that they're using it, I'm going to take that with more credibility next time.
But then I'd look at that and say, yeah, but 13% say they're using open AI. Is that realistic? Like, how about 83%?
Well,
who's not using
of this
OpenAI
survey.
as
I think a lot of companies have been really afraid to, right? Like, even when they've been explicit about their clients and their data sharing, there was a lot of FUD pre-October, which I think.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
if you want,
actually
like, a high fidelity model. You're not using anybody else's.
But that's actually another I think interesting point is we're also skewed by open tools and developer focused tools. So myself, I use OpenAI. Why do I use OpenAI and not IBM? Well, there's a really good reason for that. Like, I'm just a person.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use OpenAI. But if I was a company, I would probably have a different idea. And again, that can skew our experiences too. And I think that a lot of us are skeptical sometimes about, like Accenture was the top trusted partner for deploying AI applications in this survey. That's not shocking to me, but I think that it might be shocking to some people who live in the DevOps space.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the other thing too is you can zoom in and look at it in different ways. Like, so OpenAI is 12.6%. Maybe we want to try to see, what it is for some other buyer, some other criteria, some other industry or something like that.
This is built on Power BI, as you just
I can
saw,
see it, yeah.
right? However, I don't know if this is
Be here.
new or not, but the next generation will be.
This is
Power
the
BI is not a problem. It's
No,
the
it-
dashboard.
Right.
It's more than that, but you could be using it just for the dashboard.
There we go. Okay, so I'm back.
Yeah,
Okay, so which industry do you want to say?
like retail, is it in there? Is that
Probably.
the whole box?
Commerce, retail, something like that.
Retail.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, retail, online retail, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or-
All right, there we go.
Because that's probably going to move. Oh, see, I thought that would move IBM up, but it didn't really. But
Yeah.
that's okay. Okay, that's a small
Well, it's-
percentage.
Yeah, I suspect that a lot of the
All
IBM
that
is Red Hat.
numbers.
It could be, but I was thinking of
Doesn't it-
insurance, banking, and retail that's typically in IBM all the time.
Because in AI, everything is Linux, right?
Well,
Yeah, that's
Red Hat, Linux
Yeah.
distribution.
People use
Yeah.
Watson too, though.
And Watson, yeah.
Stephen, has this been compared to, like this type of data comes from all sorts of places, and I imagine a lot of folks have, like investment firms or others have data like this as well. I don't know if this is what one of the, I forget the presenters, Delaware? They said that, and they were making a reference to where AI is used and where impact is. Has this data been compared with other industry data as well?
Do you have an answer to that?
I can respond to it. So
I will correct my pronunciation first.
no, it's a very accurate question. So a lot of times the way I would use this is as Stephen said, this is primary research that was done off a specific survey. I would cross tab this against qualitative and quantitative research, right? So if I was doing an exercise with a client and they have customer data, I would qualify it with customer data and then cross reference into this, right? So it would be, and then I would do it against other data sources as well. So I would cut it the way you just selected and you said retail. I would cut it by the specific industry I was going after, as long as it was statistically relevant.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if there was only 12 respondents, then is it statistically relevant? Probably not. So I wouldn't use that. I would cut that out. But it would just be based on what research study was done.
So I look at this just like I look at when I put my enterprise architect hat back on and I'm trying to understand what are my peers doing. This is just for me, even though I'm obviously biased, I work for Futurum, it's just another data point. And it's another source of data. So I don't, when I'm putting my job on the line, I'm not going to just trust Futurum data or Gartner data or IDC data. I'm going to try and get all of those data sources and do exactly what Paul said, which was to run comparisons and dive in to actually know what my peers are doing versus just trusting one data source. So this is another, again, access to another data source that gives me raw data. And I get frustrated when I don't have context. When I was an independent firm and I went to go do some of this independent research myself, I was frustrated with the lack of quality respondents that I could get being a smaller research firm. So I have context of trying to do this on my own versus coming to a larger firm and having these data.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add to that, I don't know what everybody's background is, and it's cool wherever you come from, but I have 25 plus years in the vendor community, and I worked as a product and a GM in these communities to work with all the analyst firms and get the information. So I was using this data to support my value propositions, my go-to-markets and routes to market. So whatever I wanted to come up with in my world of product marketing, I would use whatever I could find in this data to support my statement,
Yep,
right?
exactly, because I would do the same.
But that's what it was. That's what I did, right? And that's what every vendor I work with does. They want to support, they want validation against what they're doing. So pivoting 5 years ago into the analyst world, I flipped over and I'm now on the other side of that going, okay, this is what I can do to help you validate your statements. So to Keith's point, you have to make sure that the data actually means something because you have to defend it. Because when it comes back to, where did you get this number? And then they pull me to the table and say, where did you get this number? I have to be able to defend the data.
And it's the same in other areas too. So that's the thing. So some of us can feel, I think, a little isolated. And I think whether you're at an end user or whether you're a writer or whether you're an analyst, you can feel a little isolated because if you're smart, you realize you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know enough outside your own experience to answer these questions or to be able to give things a fair shake. And for me, that's the thing that has really hurt me is I don't see how the entire market is using these tools. I don't see which tools they're using. I don't see what vendors they're using. And whether, and it's just the same to me as with performance data, for example. Anyone can say my thing performs real good, right? But unless it's been evaluated by a lab and unless I have, a reasonable comparison, I don't really know if it really does perform real good or not. But just like that, I'm going to then question that, and I'm going to say, well, how was this lab test done, and what what was the setup, and how did they measure it, and what did they measure, and like Karen's saying, what results did they throw out, and decide we're not going to include that one. It's the same with this kind of data, and it's the same with all the other kind of data we look at, and for me, that's what I want. Is I want to be able to say something about the market that's backed up by some kind of actual data, even though I'm smart enough to know that I can't just say, well, this is the answer. At least I can say this is backed up by a survey of people who aren't me.
It's defendable at that point.
Yeah.
Legally defensible.
It's not my gut feel.
Because it's not just you saying because all your friends and all the cool people are saying a certain, the market is this type of buyer and these type of people are doing a certain thing. But yeah, for product marketers and product managers, you can't survive without this kind of data because that's what you look at. Because you look at, okay, I know that now. Well, if you go back like to that slide you were on, that page that you were on, I can say, well, I know that 19% of these small businesses or whoever, 47% of these businesses run their AI on Microsoft, and so this is important to look. If they're running on Microsoft, then we can build our platform on. We can partner with Microsoft, and we can put that route to market out, and we can invest the time to become a better partner with Microsoft, and we can look at putting dollars into marketing it. But that's how you do it.
And I would look at this if I was a marketer, and I would say, you know what, we need to go talk to IBM. We need to talk to Oracle. We need to talk to Dell because we're already working with Microsoft, Google, and AWS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so things like that I think are pretty valuable.
Or if I'm a product manager and I want to know who my competitive landscape is, I look at it that way.
So it's just really cool, I think, to have some more data and a new data set. Now, there's actually a completely different data set in here that I want to give you guys a glimpse of, and that is market data. So this is wild to me because, again, I don't ever get access to this kind of data. What is the revenue for AI? What is the market for AI? And looking at this, I mean, my first question was, where did this come from? And the answer is essentially, whenever these analysts are taking calls, they're recording, those anecdotes that the companies drop, they're recording that stuff and they're putting it into the model. And then they have the model, the AI analyst goes back and basically he's building a global model. So basically the data comes from the top down from claims by the companies, and then it gets built into this model all the way up. And this is the answer. And that's kind of neat. So, again, I don't know if the global market for AI is $113 billion in 2024. But that's the model that they put together based on the data that they've heard from these companies and publicly available information and their own estimates and probably some informed guesses. And it's useful. It's useful to know like how big are these markets.
That's
And
the total addressable market, right? So you have the total addressable worldwide market in 2024.
isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Then you can break it down into, so we're only going to be in the US,
Yep.
in North America. So that's,
You can do
so
that.
that's what I care about. So,
Yep.
and I'm going to get out of that, 87 will go down to something, maybe.
Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing again.
So 87 will go down to another number. And then, okay, and out of that, my product specifically kills it at this one feature. And so I'm going to chase that piece of the total addressable market in North America. And then you buy that, then you get your marketing budget from that.
Right.
Have we figured it out?
Done.
I mean,
And then you profit.
Most of the numbers I've seen
Maybe.
are split across hardware, software, and
Smart
services.
marketing.
It's never just single
When you
AI.
an investor, you want the biggest number possible.
Right. Well, if you look at like, hardware manufacturers, they actually will release those numbers and they will actually claim a percentage of hardware, software, and services.
And that I haven't used this very much.
Right.
That data is probably in here.
Right.
Because there's a whole drill down view that I haven't really experimented with yet, but it is quite a view and it allows you to kind of drill into some pretty cool stuff.
There you go. Yeah. So you got the regions and then you have the industries, well, the use case. So my product is
Yeah,
my product is either software or it's a SaaS. And then the use cases are all there. So my product is a conversational AI product. And I want to deal, there's zero, so I'm going to deal with transportation because there's $1 million industry there.
Yep. And this is in Latin America. So I am in the, development, AI development tools space, and I am in Ecuador.
Yeah.
What is the market for this product? There it is.
What's incredibly powerful about this, from again being on the other side, being on the product side of it, was whenever I worked with analyst firms, they would say, "Yeah, it's in the portal. The data's in the portal," and there's thousands of data points in the portal. And try to find what you're looking for as a needle in a haystack. This is actually that data concierge kind of level of going down and getting exactly what you want. I kept saying the word cuts, but this is the cut of the data that I would look for.
Yeah.
It's like if I was looking for the real estate responses, I would know exactly this is the real estate response. It's very, very useful as a user-friendly, because again, having worked with this in the past, not this one, but having worked with other portals,
Big portal.
it's horrible. Try to
I
get the
even
data.
say that sometimes companies will charge to get that slice of data to you.
Oh, they absolutely do.
For every little piece of
And here you
document
get
that you
to do
look
it
at.
yourself.
The
It's-
large vendors, large analyst firms will absolutely charge you for cuts.
So as a content creator, I'm looking at this and thinking, I know now where to create and target content by content for. What are the markets where there's either opportunity or where's markets where there's potentially content consumers looking for my research. So this is, it's the way I could use this data and the way I will use this data because I have access.
So if you click, can you click down another to see?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you actually go at the bottom, Stephen, at the bottom of the tabs at the bottom breaks it down by the revenue. It also breaks it down by percentages. And if you break, so you can say like, these are the percentages of the market. So it's revenue and then the percentages, and then you can drill down into individual verticals from there.
Tell me what you want this. Tell me what you want me to put on. I'll put it on.
It's a really cool tool.
The growth is good because that's the CAGR, right? Is that what that is, or that's not? It's just showing percent growth by 5.
Yeah, I think this is grow the
If they're looking at how much year over year.
So the vision around this is also to accompany this information with research briefs and tools to go with it. So each one of the data sets and data points that go with this would have a corresponding research brief that goes along with it to have some analysis with the data. So if you look at what each one of those data points pertain, they'll have an analyst that will be associated with, to your earlier point, Stephen. When somebody has a question about this data, they can say, okay, this is the analyst that did the work.
Yep, and then they can go to that analyst. And so the other thing that I want to mention before we wrap is AI chipsets is coming real soon now in this portal. So there will be this same kind of data about, kind of what AI hardware. And I cannot wait to get my hands on that data, because there again, I mean, you hear about these companies, you hear about, the GPUs and
$45 billion in AI chip sales
Yeah.
in 2024.
And I really want to know, how does that break down? Who's buying that stuff? Where are they using that stuff? So I'm super excited about that.
So
We're doing DevOps tools, which is going to be, again, one of those incredible things, because you go to KubeCon and you look around and there's all these booths and you're like, I've never heard of that company. Why do they have a big booth? Is it marketing? Is it sales?
Coming in real soon. It's in the market. It's in the field right now. I have my observability study
Oh,
field right
great.
now. That's coming. That'll be in here.
Paul, can I ask you a question? Like, when I look at this stuff, I kind of try to break it down into a couple of things. So Keith, I think about like you're saying how I could use this data. I'm asking myself questions about like, what are the feedback loops that this data has and the learning opportunities to go, okay, so for example, if you're dealing with companies that are late adopters, you could say, hey, maybe putting a conversational chat bot on your website is not going to make you the revenue that you thought it did. Where's the learning opportunity for that? And where's the opposite side of that to look past the data into the future, pun intended, to go, what did we miss, right? Where's the sort of thought leadership on where things are going outside of the hardware stuff? Because my mind's just blown on that today. But like, where are people really going to find the value in the industries and the use cases? What do they look like? And I ask myself questions around like, I finished up a big AI project recently, and I went back in, and when I finish projects up, I'll go back in and I'll spend some time to look what people were saying like 4 or 5 months ago and see if either my intuition or me picking up on signals that I didn't think I was picking up on sort of played out right. And I pulled it was called like the WINS framework by Harvard Business, HBR. And, it worked for me, but I was like, I didn't read it. I didn't use the HBR framework. I just sort of co-opted it after the fact. And what they said makes sense. So where does something like Harvard Business, when they come up and say something like, hey, use this framework, look for text, vision, and other things to apply it as use cases, where does that stuff come from? Because obviously they said it before anybody did it, or, right, like, where does that data come from?
So that is not there. Just kind of put it into perspective. I wouldn't say it's the same thing. What I would say is the way I would use what you're talking about is layer that methodology on top of this. And if I was using, I've never done a research study, but I didn't go back and go, I missed that question. I've always gone back and go, I wish I asked something else, because you always go get the data and you're like, that's something I should have asked. But I would take the information I've received here and extrapolate from here with that methodology on top of it. Is that what you were asking, or?
I just want to be able to tell the future.
I get that.
What you need to do is you need to feed this data into OpenAI. Don't do that. And then ask OpenAI what the future will be.
That'd be a wreck. wouldn't it?
It's usually a series of variables, right? Plug those variables in, that'll give you the prediction for the methodology.
Speaking of AI, show us the question. There was ask it a question.
So I have seen glimpses of what they're doing next, and they're doing some pretty cool stuff next to enhance this, and that's a great idea.
Well, no, there was. Go back to your panel. It was on there.
So how does this compare to the other analyst offering?
See down there. Ask a question about your data.
Yeah, because this, you can get this.
Yeah.
This is,
Try
I
it.
love the way you can click through and get.
I don't know what'll happen, but try it.
What stock
But
to
like,
buy?
as far as, do things match up? Like at the same.
Yes.
Just
Where's Elvis?
something basic like, what's the biggest region for retail AI revenue? Good. Live demo.
I don't know how this works. I've never tried this.
You can do it.
Let's go. Well, it works.
Well, it definitely came back with answers.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, no, it's
Oh, it's the same. It's the same.
it's summed up all the number. That's all right.
Well, we won't.
That's why I was curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good.
To Stevens,
I know they're working on that.
we've seen the future, and
Yeah,
that was a very good suggestion.
yes.
So, did you have a question or a comment? Yeah.
Yeah, the question was, how does this, I like the ease of getting to the answers that you need. I think that part's pretty cool. Maybe two questions. Number one, it's easy to get to an answer. Is it easy to click in and find the original research once you get to that segment? But then the other thing is how does this compare to offerings from other analyst firms?
And I'm not able to answer that question because I've never had access to this kind of data. Do one of you have access to this?
So I will put it out this way. If you look at the major analyst firms, when I say that, like the large ones, the Gartners, Forresters, and IDC. Gartners and Forresters obviously have their comparatives with the waves and the quadrants, right? IDC is probably most comparison to this because
Okay.
because it has the TAM and SAM data. Of course, the data sets are different because we have research for our specific our studies. That's why we can't show you the research studies. But that data is different. And what to Keith's earlier point, this is what I used to do as well before I was an analyst, is I would get this information and compare it to the IDCs and other people to say, is it the same or not? And if it's not, then I would pull those two analyst firms together and go, why is this different?
Yeah,
What's an IDC?
analyst
say-
firm.
International Corporation.
Okay.
Yes, it's kind of similar to stuff that 451 has,
Oh,
but the tool is more interactive. Right? Theirs is like download a bunch of stuff. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and like then you have to figure it all
That's,
out.
yeah,
Yeah, I've heard that
Tool
there's a
is
lot of
nice.
spreadsheets,
that's the challenge.
Of
We have a
different
lot of data to go
products.
through.
Yeah, I
That
don't
is
know
the
about that
challenge.
particular one.
It really is.
And it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
But will it be in the future with AI?
Yeah.
In theory, no, right?
So I just wanted to share this with you guys because I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool to be able to see this. I thought it was kind of cool to be able to see some checkpointing on which vendors are actually being used according to the survey. And my plan as soon as I got access to this was I'm going to be looking at this whenever I'm reporting on this stuff, whenever I'm on a briefing. First thing I'm going to do is look up a little bit of a checkpoint about, who's this that I'm talking to? Is this a legit, major market player, and that's going to inform basically the rest of my discussion, the rest of my coverage, the rest of everything. And for me, that was really cool. So I'm glad that I could share this with you. And like I said, this is available to external customers as well. And they are radically improving it, expanding it, adding coverage areas. It's a huge area of investment for the company too, which is kind of cool. So there you have it. That's the Futurum Intelligence platform. And I would love to give you guys more access. If you want me to look something up for you, I would be happy to do that. And thanks for giving me a little bit of time to tell you about it.